What is going on, guys? It's your boy, Mr. Banks, back with another trade recap. I mean, absolutely demolished today. But today I want to make this video about macro demand and understand why we took calls today on both SPY and QQQ. So today's video will be over macro demand and understanding it, understanding the big levels on the higher time frames, and then going to the smaller time frames to actually take the trades. Now, before I get started, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button so you don't miss any of this educational content I put out on a daily basis to help make you a consistent trader. What's up, guys? Hope we're having a good evening. Now, before I get started as well, I want to tell you patience, 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 patience paid today. You have to understand there will be days where it becomes very choppy. It can be very trappy, but that doesn't mean we give up. It also means that we need to practice the proper risk management every single day. You don't have a winning streak and then all of a sudden you're oversizing, you're not following your rules. We should always be practicing proper risk management. In reality, we should never have a blown account day or a massive, huge loss if we're practicing proper risk management. Those things are 100% preventable. So moving forward, guys, let's come every day trading the same way, not oversizing, cutting losses early, and letting our winners run. But you guys came here for the trade recap. So let me go ahead and get started with that. Go ahead and share my screen with you guys. Now, as you guys know, I am doing live trades that we're taking. We're going over SPY today with the group as well as QQQ. First, shout out to everyone in the wolves. We absolutely destroyed today. So give a big shout out to everyone. But here is the trade recap, but going over macro demand, right? Going over macro demand here. What does that mean? Well, we all know what demand is, right? Demand is where we're having buyers stepping up. It's where buyers are showing up, showing us that there's demand, right? The same as concepts as in business, supply and demand, as in economics, is the same way when it comes to trading, right? It's the same thing when it comes to trading. Are there buyers or are there sellers, right? The buyers showing up is demand. Supply, sellers, right? They're supplying, they're selling off. So big difference there. Demand, buyers, just think about it simple. Supply, sellers. So now that we know that, let's go ahead and take a look here on the higher time frame. Now I am on the daily here on SPY. What are we looking at? Macro demand. Well, if we take a look here, right, we've been selling, selling, selling. Actually, a nice little bear H there to push down. But what are some confluences that we can look for? Well, one of the biggest ones that you can look for, especially on the daily timeframes, is going to be the 200 SMA, right? The simple moving averages. Now you ask, well, why do I use the SMA over the EMA? Well, since we're on the higher time frame, the SMA is developed over using a longer period of time. And since we're using a longer period of time, I prefer that SMA over the EMA. But if we're on the intraday, smaller time frames, right, we really need the data based off of the most recent moves. That's why we use the EMAs on the more intraday setups. But as far as the daily, we're always going to use the SMA. You can also use the EMA, but I prefer the SMA. It's what traders have been doing for decades, the simple moving average. 200 SMA, above it is bullish, below is bearish, right? Another concept to understand here on the daily time frame. But another thing with the 200 is typically we see big bounces and big sells when we go and reach it, right? So if we take a look back here, 200, huge sell, 200, huge sell, right? So we were always selling once we hit the 200, right? Typically, when we hit that 200 SMA, there is a pretty big, powerful move off of it. Now, I'm not saying when it comes down to here where we're getting a bounce right now that we're going to have this massive bounce here, like we had a massive sell when we touched it way back here in August of 2022. But what I'm saying is we typically get a decent size move coming off of the 200 SMA, whether we're coming down to it or whether we're coming up to it, depending on where we are. We typically see a decent size move. Now we've been above this. We've been above the 200 since March. So it's been quite a while that we've been above the 200 and now coming back down. We more than likely are going to see a big move. So this is going to be our macro demand, a big picture demand area. And another thing about this macro demand, if we go ahead and take a look back, we had a massive supply, right? Massive supply zone. So you can see here, when we broke out of it to these new highs of the year, right? If we take a look back, supply, 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 supply. So what are we seeing here? Well, if we zoom in a little bit, we can see that the 200 is lined up with the bounce here on top of this huge supply, now turning into demand. As you guys can see, that huge supply, supply, supply. We're at the top of it, coming back down. The 200 is right at the top of what was supply, now turning into demand. But we also can see here, right? Breakout, breakout, retest, right? Breakout, right? We broke out. You can see right here, flagged out to the breakout to the highs, coming back and retesting. So now we know another thing is stocks like to break out and retest. So we can see how big of a level this is around 418, 419, right? Very, very big macro demand level. Top of previous massive supply zone, right? So we have that going for us. We have the breakout retest. We have that going for us. And we have the 200 SMA going for us. So a lot of confluences here to take a trade and to look for this to bounce and hold as demand, right? So now we got the big macro demand down. Let's look at the smaller time frames. So as you guys know, here is the 1 hour. Absolutely love it. And again, when we're trading intraday, it is still good to look at the daily. It is still good to look at the 1 hour, even though they are larger time frames. We take a look here on the 1 hour. One thing we could have noticed to take some trades today was, right, we could have used this level here, this 422 level, right? Where is this 422 level doing for us, right? Resistance, 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 right? Found out support. And then back test, huge flag into this big 422 level, right? Huge flag on the 1 hour for that last push up in the day. So this was a good picture perfect bull flag into a push up from a major support resistance flip level. So this is just an example of one of the trades you could have taken. This isn't where I took my trade. I took it earlier in the day, but I just want to give you guys an example of how the 1 hour is really good to still use when you're taking your intraday levels, right? We always want to be looking at the higher time frames, right? It will show us our bigger demand zones. Another thing we saw at the early of the day, tweezer bottom. Huge, huge reversal pattern when it comes to trading. I think tweezer tops and bottoms, especially, all the way down to the 5 minute to larger time frames are pretty good. I find a high successful rate, winning percentage of them actually playing out. So look up tweezer bottoms, tweezer tops. They're a great, great pattern to use for reversals, right? So knowing this, right, knowing how to tweezer bottom, let's go down to the 5 minutes. So again, we have the huge macro demand that we bounced off of in pre-market. As we could see right here, we're holding above. Let me go ahead and take this 200 off though. We're not using it for the intraday. And another thing to keep in mind is looking intraday, right? So looking at the previous levels. So we know that we bounced off of this macro demand. And then what is happening here, right? Nice big rounded bottoms. So typically when a stock is going to at least get a bounce or coming from lows, we kind of see that rounded bottom. You'll see people talk about rounded tops or rounded bottoms. This is kind of a picture perfect view of a nice rounded bottom, right? We have a nice rounded bottom pushing up, right? Rounding bottoms is what we really want to see, especially if we're going to catch a low and push it up. So we have that macro demand. We have a rounded bottom forming, but we also have a higher low, right? A higher low from yesterday's low, higher low from pre-market low, showing us that even when we're selling off intraday, right, we failed to create a new low. So we tried twice on SPY today. We're on the 5 minute now, looking at our intraday. So one way or one reason why I went long at this level here was, yes, it looked like we were getting weak. It looked like we were selling off again. We couldn't break above pre-market high, looking very, very weak. And then we bounced, right? And then we put in a lower high, right? So I know a lot of people tried to get short here, right? Try to get short here on this break, but we didn't. We put in a double bottom, a higher low. And what this told me for me to take my trade was we are failing to break the low, right? The bears have now tried twice intraday to go and create a new low, to break to a new low, and they failed twice. So once we had this low, this double bottom creating a higher low, the bears failed twice to go and create a new low of the day, failed to go below pre-market low. I saw this as an opportunity. Okay, we're at this huge macro demand. Intraday is telling me that the bulls are stepping up as well, right? So on the 1 hour, again, right? 1 hour, we would have saw push up, we're coming from the lows and we're pushing up, creating a tweezer bottom, right? We're forming a tweezer bottom at these lows here. The daily, right? We had that macro demand, and then we're going down to the 5-minute time frame, where I love to take my entries, and we can see that we are failing to create a new low, right? The bulls are stepping up. This is exactly what we want to see, especially at this huge, huge level that we were talking about, right? You want to see those bulls step up. We have the round and bottom, and now we had 2 fails of going lower. So one of the things to keep in mind is a stock can tell you most of the time where it wants to go by where it doesn't want to go. So I'll say that again. A stock a lot of the times will tell you where it wants to go by showing you where it doesn't want to go. So we're failing to create a new low, right? It's all about level. Stocks are bouncing from level to level. So we're failing to create a new low. Then more than likely, we're going to go back up and go find a new level, a new high, right? A new level, a new high. So once we fail to create a new low here, the alert wasn't until here. I took this trade on my own here, moved pretty quickly, so I couldn't give that alert out, but we did take alert up here, right? We did take an alert up here. So once we came up here to the highs, we came back down here. I saw this as an opportunity to take the trade. So we actually entered on this candle right down here. And let me show you exactly why I entered there. Right? Pretty big level, pretty big level. This was our reject breakdown, right? So we broke back above, retest, right? So as we saw in the higher time frames, breakout retest. This is also kind of a intraday breakout retest. So we could see right here is a pretty big level. We have 2 wicks up. Obviously, we have this long wick up to the upside up here, but we have these 2 wicks right here where we pushed up initially and then we rejected initially. So we have this around 422.28, 422.30 level as a pretty big intraday kind of support resistance flip. Let's pull it back just a little bit more for you guys. We can also see that this level, right? We can also see this level dating all the way back to about dating into the pre-market. Pretty big level as well, right? Rejecting it, broke above, retesting, holding as support, push up, right? So we could see that this 422.30 is a pretty big intraday level. And then we come into the opening play, right? Holding as support. And then we have these 2 wicks here, right? So this is a pretty big intraday support resistance flip. Once we finally broke back above this level with strength, showing me that the bulls are here, back testing it, I saw that risk to reward to be there. I mean, we failed to go lower twice. We're on this macro demand. We're coming back to retesting it. The risk to reward right here was there, right? I would have added down to about that 422 level to hold if we did come a little bit lower. But looking at this back test here, I mean, you guys can see this is a pretty big major level, and we entered on this candle here. Now we needed to wait and we needed to stay patient. But as you guys can see here, one thing I was looking at, see if we can push high of the day, right? So when we're looking at a push in the levels, one thing we need to notice is how is it rejecting? Are we getting a major reject? Is it just kind of sitting there? So if there was a lot of supply in this level and the sellers were going to be very heavy in this level, I mean, we had a pretty big move from down here. We would have saw a bigger move of a sell, right? So if the sellers were really in control, we would have saw a bigger move down, right? But we didn't. We saw a back test, hold, 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 right? So we're just hanging out around this 423 level, right? Near the high of the day, near pre-market high. We're just hanging out, right? We're just hanging out. We're not selling off. So I stayed patient. We did trim on this push up here, and then we just stayed patient, right? We stayed patient. And the reason for that, again, was if we were going to see a reject, if we're going to see essentially like a triple, you call it a triple top or double top here, we would have saw a bigger move down. So the thing to know about levels is if sellers are going to be there, or if there's going to be big buyers there, we're going to see a big move here. Just like this level down here. We came down, big move. Came down again, big move back up, right? Showing us that the buyers are there. If we're going to have a big level here, more than likely we're going to have a bigger push down if there's sellers are going to take control, but they didn't. All right, we're just hanging out here. And finally we got that push up to the new high of the day, taking profits along the way. So very detailed explanation of macro demand. What is it? How to use it? Why are we looking for a bounce? And then coming down to the intraday levels on the smaller time frames, understanding, using our macro demand levels along with the price action of what's going on to understand, okay, the bulls are in control, failure to go lower here, right? Very, very basic. Using this without the volume, this is pure candlestick price action, no volume, just looking at price action. That is it. A lot of people have asked, about what is price action? How do you read it? This is it. I think I gave a very detailed explanation of how to read price action on this video, how to read macro demands, what are they, how to use the higher time frames, and coming down to the smaller time frames and how to actually take the trade based off of our big macro demand levels. Now, I did say I'd go over QQQ real quick, so I'll do that just to end the video, but it's going to be the same thing, guys. Going to be the same thing when it comes to QQQ, right? Going to be the same. Let me go back to the daily here. So what do we see here? Now, the 200 didn't line up, but if we don't have that SMA, we can also just use levels. So if we go ahead and take a look here, right? Sorry, go ahead and take a look here. We could see about this 352.50, 352.40, right? Right, pretty big level here that we're holding, right? This was the push up. It came back down, bounce, right? So we could see that this is a pretty big macro demand on the daily, right? Pretty big macro demand on the daily on QQQ. So same reasoning, same way to find it. Just we had that SMA in this big supply demand zone flip on SPY. But here's the same thing, right? Still just basic levels we're using, right? We had that support, breakout, support, right? Demand, still a big demand level. And now going down to the smaller time frames, same thing. Rounded bottom, we hit that low, getting a nice big rounded bottom for a push up. And what are we holding here, right? What are we holding here, guys? We're holding some pretty big levels, right? We're holding that after hours high here. We came back down. So this is where we took the trade right here on this bounce here. And then we came back down to this level, right? So both levels, again, intraday, when you're looking at something that's going to bounce, you want to look left, right? So if you can't really figure out where you're bouncing from, you always want to look left. And that's a really good way to understand levels. Where is something bouncing? Where is something rejecting? Let's go look left. If you don't have a level there, well, let's look left, because I guarantee there's going to be a level on the left that's pretty major of where it's bouncing and where it's rejecting. So we have our big levels on the higher time frames, but for the intraday levels, right? Let's look left on the smaller time frames, and I guarantee there will be a pretty big level to the left that is showing you, okay, this was a resistance, now turn to support, or this was a support, now turn to resistance, or support, right? You get the picture. So one way to understand or read levels is, where did something bounce from? Where did something reject from? All right, let's look left and see where it is. That will help you understand levels a lot better and get you better at understanding levels. So we took the trade here, right? And what was a big level here? So we look left. We can see in pre-market, right? This was a pretty big, coming from yesterday, right? We have the high, not the high, but we have after hours high here, right in the close. Two big levels here, right? Opening print essentially. We can also see there's support here, but coming back down to this level right here, we can see pretty big level, right? So we had a reject here. We broke back above, and then we had this sell, like this print right here. And what happened though? This was a pretty big support level, right? So this like 350, 355.50, right? Pretty big support. It's what held us in the pre-market to push up and then push up right at open. You can see here 355, 355, 355, pretty big level. So we have a big level here, intraday, two levels to hold. And we got him, right? We got the hold. We know that this is a pretty big demand zone down here, demand level. We have a rounded bottom, same thing with SPY. So we're really easy, guys. Intraday levels are important. Macro levels are important. Always use the bigger picture. Always use the smaller picture to take your entries on, but use them both, guys. Use them both. And again, if you watch the last video, QQQ and SPY, always look at the top holdings. What are they doing? Are they bouncing? Are they holding? Are they strong? Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, Tesla. Are they moving? Right? Are they going up or are they going down? Because as you know, QQQ and SPY are made up of companies, right? And they have top holdings. So look at the top 10, top 5 holdings of both and see, what are they doing? If they're moving up, QQQ and SPY are probably going to move up, right? That's their holdings. So leave you on this. I know it's kind of a long video, but I'll leave you guys on this. Macro demand is really, really big. 200 SMA, above is bullish, below is bearish, right? Kind of on all time frames if you use it for intraday as well. But for macro demand, right, we had those confluence on SPY. 200 SMA, above the huge supply zone flip, breakout retest, right? Coming back down to that level. So we had all these confluences going for SPY to have a bounce today. I used the larger time frames to see those big levels, right? We saw some big candlestick reversal patterns on the higher time frames. So another thing about higher time frames is, if we see certain patterns, if we see patterns on higher time frames, usually they hold more weight for that bigger move, right? So on the smaller time frames, we could see a bull flag, bear flag. Yes, we take those type of trades on the intraday, but if you see those on the bigger time frames, they're going to play out with bigger moves, right? Because bigger time frames are going to take longer to play out. So if you see a bull flag on the daily and it forms and it plays out, it's going to be playing out over days, right? You're going to get a massive move since it's a massive bull flag. I hope you guys understand that concept. So bigger time frames, go down to the smaller time frames, use them in conjunction, try to find confluences with larger levels, with smaller levels. There you guys have it. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you watched it in this video, go ahead and comment below. I'll be sure to get back to you if you have any questions. Again, guys, thank you so much for coming out. Going to try to make trade recaps every single day for you guys moving forward, and maybe even some special weekend little mini courses for you guys. I think I'm going to have planned for you free of charge, obviously on the YouTube for free, because I want you guys to become consistently profitable. I want you guys to become good traders. Trading is a tool for freedom, and I want you guys to get there. I was blessed with it, so I want you guys to be blessed with it. The true meaning of wealth is serving others. So I hope we end the week well. Again, practice good risk management. Great in-depth video of how to use macro demand, how to find trends, patterns, big time frames, smaller time frames. Use them all together. I love you guys. Again, my name is Mr. Banks. If you have any questions, go ahead and drop any questions you have in the comment section. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share with your friends. I'll see you guys next time on another trade recap. Mr. Banks, I'm out.